Yo guys, what's up? It's Lax again, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different kind of analysis. So I'm going to be talking about this black and white invitational winners top four versus SoulWind, and just a little brief kind of history. So black and white invitational goes back to Gen 5, Generation 5 OU, black and white, and it invites kind of like the best black and white players throughout history. If they're still around, they all got an invite to this, and I kind of slipped in there. Like I have a little bit of black and white experience. I wasn't really playing around too much during that time, but I had some official tour experience and through like classic and like I played it in World Cup for West at one point. But my opponent here today is Solwins. He is probably like everybody agrees that he's probably the best black and white OU player of all time. He's got like probably the best SPL record in that. He went 9-0, 9 wins, 0 losses in the season. So he's definitely a top dog and a major threat. So throughout this tournament, I haven't been bringing the most serious teams. I think a big advantage I have in this tournament is lack of information. So people don't really know what to expect from me. And throughout the tournament, I've been bringing kind of silly teams were provided by my friend TDK and Tashi. I just kind of messed around and just kind of relied on like kind of outplaying and having a surprise matchup in order to take games. But now that we are here in top four of winners, I decided to go a bit more serious. I like to use kind of text, I guess. I think it gives me a really huge advantage in my opponent not exactly knowing what to expect. So for this team I brought today, Latios has Culverberry and Hidden Power Fire, which is obviously really good for Ferrothorn. Heat Train is a Bloom, Sunny Day, Magma Storm, Hidden Power Ice, and Solar Beam set, which can actually claim a kill pretty easily. Like if I end up playing it right. So those are the big deals, and I also have Hidden Power Ghost on Keldeo, your typical Choppleberry Pursuit Tyranitar, Dual Hazards Ferrothorn, and then Scarflander. So we'll see how this one goes. I think someone brought a fairly typical team. Excadrill, Titar, Rotom, Ferrothorn, Latios, Uniclus. I can pretty much expect like pretty standard sets for most of them. So to kind of start it out, I go for a Power Whip because I want to chip this for my Keldeo or my Latios or my Heatran. So I hope he went for a Wish to go for that trade, but he doesn't. Now he goes Ferrothorn. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's gonna click Rocks. So the best play to me is just to go Heatran, pressure something instantly. And in this position, he's obviously not going to let his Ferrothorn stay in on a Magma Storm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Sunny Day, hoping he either hard switches Rotom or Tyranitar, because those are, his fire resist. And then if I click Sunny Day as he switches in Sand, I could Solar Beam for like 80, and that would set up my Latios really well. Or I could chip the Rotom lot again for my Keldeo or my Heatran. So I go for the Sunny Day here. He actually goes Latios, and this is not bad for me. I think Latios is also pretty annoying because that's the main stop to Keldeo, and it can also be another Earthquake switching to Landers, so it's kind of annoying. So my plan here is to just go for a Magma Storm, trade it out, because if he is like a choice spec Surf or something, it's not going to do a lot of damage in Sunny Day with weakened Surf power. So he does go for Surf. I believe that is a Scarf set, and I trap him with Magma Storm, get the HP Ice, and that's Latios gone, which makes Keldeo. It kind of switches my main win condition to my Keldeo, because nothing else probably outspeeds, unless it's like a Scarf Tower, which would be a little surprising on this build. So that's dead, and he goes Tyranitar here. Well, at this point, Heatran is pretty low. It's not going to do much, but I decided to save it as a sack because he's probably just going to superpower Earthquake. He actually doubles into Rotomash, which is good play. It forces me to just have to U-turn out. 22% damage is notable and will matter in the future. So I go Tran here. I'm like, okay. So I could have just stayed in, sack Tran and Magma, maybe got a lot of chip on Rotom, but I decided to preserve the sack. And then I end up having to switch it back into a Volt Switch, so it has to be sacked again. But he goes Excadrill, and at this point I'm thinking I might want to keep the sack later on, which really comes into play. So I go Ferrothorn on Ironhead with the plan of going Landorus on Earthquake. So that's what I do. He actually doubles the Ferrothorn, which is another good play for him to get more hazards up, seeing as I don't have any hazard control at all. So I just decide, okay, I'm just gonna cut my losses. I'm gonna go for rocks. He's gonna get all his hazards up. That's fine. And then I hard switch into my HP Fire Latios. And this is an interesting turn because HP Fire Latios is definitely like an existing set and it's definitely a threat, but I think a lot of people don't anticipate it because most people opt for like a choice specs or scarf, Draco, serve, trick, maybe roost, or maybe even Psyshock is a little more common. So here I'm thinking that there's a pretty high chance that he's either going to expect me to anticipate his Tyranitar double and just switch back into like a lander, so like a Keldeo, or that I can just get a free HP fire off because he's not going to expect me to just go for that with a full HP Tyranitar still there. So I do end up going for the HP fire, which chips away a lot of this health. He knocks off my Culver Berry. Probably expecting like a knocking off a trick, but at this point I know that Tyranitar's coming in because I revealed my set. So I go Landorus. He goes Tyranitar. Free U-turn for me. And at this point, his Ferrothorn is really low. I have two hazards up on two spikes on my side already. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get my own spikes up because his Excadrill can spin, but I have a sack in Heatran and a soon-to-be sack in Ferrothorn as well. So I just go for spikes, spike all the way up. I go for one Power Whip to kind of make sure that I die to hazards afterwards because 25 plus 6 would be 30 damage in hazards that Ferrothorn would take on switching. So by going for a Power Whip, I ensure that this is a sack and not able to be spun on. So at this point, I know that he can't touch Latios, so I'm just going to hard switch Latios. I'm just going to heal up. And I kind of greedied going for HP Fire here, but I thought it wasn't a bad play. And I already got all my hazards up. I did a lot of work with this, so I think it's fine at the end of the day. I just go for Draco expecting a pursuit. He goes for a crunch, which makes sense because this could have still been a threat if it was alive and eating pursuit. So I go Keldeo, just go for a Scald, finish that off. He goes Rotom. Here is actually where I would consider a misplay. So Keldeo is actually a pretty good win condition with HP Ghost. That would do about like 60 to 70 to Uniclus, and that means that if I ever have Tyranitar in versus Uniclus, I can Pursuit Trap it, and then I can win with Keldeo versus the rest of his team because I outspeed it. So I think that would have been a better endgame for me to kind of go for, but I decided to go for the chip anyways. He goes for Volt. He goes for Uniclus. I'm like, okay, I'm down to hazards anyway. Just gonna click HP Ghost. He goes for a Combine, and at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't want this to boost up too much because if it's full HP, it boosts it up, then it can threaten Tyranitar with the one shot. Like you can stay in on Crunch, threaten Tyranitar with the one shot, and then still eat a hit from like Landers, for example. So I decided to just hard switch Tyranitar. He recovers. I go for Pursuit, get a lot of damage on him, 62%. It's huge. He sacks Ferrothorn. Then he goes Drill. And at this point, I have 3 sacks in my pocket. So I have Ferrothorn, Keldeo, Heatran. All of these will die to hazards, which basically makes this a 2v3, but the sacks really do help out. So him going extra drill here means that, you know, he can spin, he can EQ, probably just gonna EQ. I just sack number 1. So Heatran gone. And then I bring in Landorus. And I just, at this point, my game plan is I click Earthquake. And and that's pretty much it. And I let this Rotom die to hazard. So I click Earthquake, he protects, he goes Rotom on Earthquake, and then I sack Keldeo, for example, and then I go back to Landers, U-turn on the 16% Rotom. He probably goes back to Excadrill or sacks something else, and then we kind of repeat that over and over, and that's like the main way I can win. But something I didn't actually realize during the game is he might have considered me to be a non-choice Lander set, because I went for Stealth Rocks. So he actually goes to Reuniclus, which I think might have been a misplay on his part. But uh, that's just kind of how it unfolds. And I sack Ferrothorn here, go for U-turn. That does about 22% Excadrill, which means that after spikes, He will end up dying to a U-turn, so I can just click U-turn twice and win. So the only way he can win here, I think, is with a triple protect, because that triple protect will bring him to enough HP that he can live U-turn after all these hazards, and that is the only way to give him a shot. But I think I still win that anyways. So he kind of has to pray like he gets a triple protect, then go Rotom, and then Hydro Pump, and then hope that I'm forced to go for U-turn as my final move as the last mon 1v1. So I go to Tyranitar here. Kind of calculated out. Pain Split doesn't heal him about just enough, like 3% off, which is very lucky. So Hidden Power kills, and then U-turn kills. And that was game 1. So for game 2, this is a team I kind of stole off of Dice, a very prominent black and white player. On his version, he has Scarf Tyranitar over the Latios slot. It makes sense why he has that, but I wanted to try this Latios set. I have a Colbur Berry, Grass Knot, Hidden Power Fire, Thunder, and Draco, which is a non-existent Latios set, and nobody should ever expect that. But basically, the goal of my team is to get up all my hazards and then kind of break with Latios, break with Jirachi, break with Scizor, try to do some work there. And he unfortunately does have Tentacruel, which I anticipated him to lead versus obvious lead Skarmory. He did end up going to Politoed instead, so I just kind of try to scare him out. Like, okay, I could be Specs Thunder, haha. Try to force him out there. Um, I doubled the Skarmory here on the Scald, unfortunately, because I was thinking if I Thunder here, force him out, go to Ferrothorn, I go to Skarmory, Skarmory versus Ferrothorn is ideal. That's like an ideal lead matchup. I can taunt him, I can get my own hazards up all the way up, have a spin blocker for his Tentacruel, but he makes the good play. He just goes for Scald, so I end up only getting Stealth Rock up, which actually is a pretty large hindrance to me. So at this point, I just go Latios again. I just click Thunder. He goes Ferrothorn, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to chip this thing down for maybe a Garchomp clean or like a Jirachi clean. So I just go for a weak little rain-affected hidden power. He gets rocks up. I go for it again, and luckily here I believe he does get paralyzed, which is actually a major deal. He just lets me finish that off. But if he didn't get paralyzed, that's another spike up. And spike affects basically my entire team. So my entire team would get chipped down, and I think that was pretty lucky and instrumental into my victory. So here he goes. Latios, I actually predict a Surf here because I don't think him letting in like Jirachi for free would be very good for him because Jirachi is actually a very big threat if he knows the set, which is Thunder and Iron Head. So I go Jellicent expecting that, and he actually goes for a Dragon Pulse, which is fine. At this point, I just recover up, and I don't want him to get a free double switch into like Tentacruel, even though, or like Politoed, even though I don't know why he would really do that. I just try to take back some momentum, so I go for a Will-O-Wisp, and he does go for Dragon Pulse again, so I'm pretty low, but the good news is that Jellicent still acts as a spin blocker, right? So I make sure to preserve that. I go Scizor. Um, this Scizor can't really do much because Tentacruel does hard counter a little bit. But I go for a Swords Dance, hoping he would go Politoed. He does end up going Tentacruel, so I just go to my spin blocker. He does go for Scald though, which makes sense because you can't mess around with a +2 Scizor anyways. Alright, he goes for T-Spikes as I get a Wisp off on this thing. I just want to kind of weaken this for my Jirachi, weaken it for my Latios. I just go for Recover. I kind of greeted. I'm like, okay, I'll try to burn him again. But he goes for the safe play Encore, which makes sense. So at this point, I want to sack Scizor. I'm thinking Scizor's completely useless. And he actually goes Mammoth on the Scizor, which gives me the opportunity to go for some damage and chip the rest of his team. So I just click Superpower twice, which is really helpful getting that Politoed low for my Latios. Latios Thunder would Oko, Grass that would also Oko. I try to be a little cheeky. And even though he would never switch Mammoth there, I try to go for a Grass Knot, which is fine. He goes back Latios. I'm like, okay, Chomp is kind of useless. And I'm actually looking to sack it here because Mammoth can just one-shot with Shard, or like Keldeo could be Scarf at outspeed anyways. He does actually trick it. So this allows me to kind of, pretend that I made a god play and then just go Jirachi on the dragon move that he's forced to click afterwards. So I do go for a Thunder here, I believe. Thunder's pretty free. And I know that I'm faster because Rain Dish revealed and then Leftovers revealed and Black Sludge revealed, so I know that I'm faster in that way. I just go for an Iron Head. I think 60% chance to win the game basically is a pretty good odd for me, so I just go for it again. He goes Keldeo, and here I actually don't want to take a Rain Boosted Scald from Specs. Obviously, you revealed Leftovers, but I don't want to take a Rain Boosted Scald anyways, so I go to Garchomp again to sack it, and he goes for a sub. So here's a little bit of misplay. I actually go for Dual Chop on Garchomp, thinking that I could, I don't know, I guess break the sub and do damage, which is very unlikely. So this actually gives me an opportunity to miss the move, and him having a sub up, which could make the game tricky. So it wasn't a great play. He does go for sub again to kind of scout out, like, am I just going for outrage? I'm going for EQ. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, I gotta stay in. I just gotta do it, and he takes me out. So I go back to Latios. He sacks Tentacruel. He goes to his own Scarf Latios. And at this point, I'm like, okay, what's the best way to kind of prevent him from, I don't know, getting like a sub off with Keldeo or like a Mammoth? So I go Jellicent. He goes for Trick, and I'm thinking, okay, Nightshade is probably the best move to go for. Unfortunately, he did reveal Roost on the set, which barely outheals Nightshade, but I would eventually die to Poison and kind of accomplish nothing. So I go for it one more time in hopes that he might, kind of mess up an attack, but that's fine. So now I hard switch to Jirachi because I know Jirachi can do enough damage at this percent in health after burn. Sorry, we'll let the burn take effect. So I know Jirachi can do enough percentage of health at this point to not let him roost freely because I have HP Ice and max special attack. So that is what I end up going for. He tries to trick. I think he wanted to live the burn and then try to roost up with leftovers, but I think my max special attack kind of put him out of that range completely. So at this point, I just take the Scald, go for Thunder. I guess it could have been tricky if you got a Scald burn into Ice Shard crit, but at that point, I was feeling pretty confident that would be fine. So that is my series with SoulWind. He's obviously, a very respected black and white player, probably the most of all time. And I kind of had to rely on like random sets like Sunny Day Heatran and uh and this this random Ladio set to kind of pull through, but that's kind of what you have to do when you're playing against players that are just more knowledgeable about tiers that you're not at so much, right? You have to surprise them. You have to make them think on their toes. You have to make them kind of guess what you're doing and play your own game. So if you make them play your game, that's the biggest advantage you can have in Pokemon. Is how I feel about it. So thank you guys for listening. I hope some people found this entertaining. And yeah, I'll catch you guys for the next one. Goodbye.